Hello, everyone. It's Marcia Bench of PurposefulEntrepreneur.com, and I'm delighted to welcome you to one of our series of interviews with purposeful entrepreneurs that are actually living their life purpose through their business and branding that in what they do every day. And so today's guest is Dr. Kirk Prine and his partner, Donald Lobree, who are good friends of mine, and we'll hear more about what they do in just a moment. But they are shining examples, I would say, of actually going after what you most feel called to do and love to do and impacting people's lives in a very positive way in doing so. So welcome to both of you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, Marcia.
What a delight.
So we're going to kind of tag team here and give each of them a chance to answer each of the questions, because I know their journeys have been a bit different and then eventually merging several years ago. So Kirk, why don't you start out and just kind of tell us how you got started in your professional career?
Okay, yeah. Well, the journey has been a series of awakenings that took me into some concrete steps, and each step taking me into the next step. So for me, my journey was I had some spiritual awakening very early on as a boy, and decided to go to seminary. So actually started there and went through that process. And in the process of that, saw that I couldn't be fully congruent with who I was in that process, but I knew I was a healer. So the next step was, how do I express that? So having gone through my training, became a psychotherapist for 17 years and worked primarily with gay, lesbian, and bisexual and transgendered people and bringing work to them and helping to create kind of a freedom from inside movement early on as a psychotherapist. And then AIDS came along, and it was another awakening for me. And it was a time of just having my heart burst open hugely, because, over the period of the AIDS epidemic, I knew and was involved intimately in 300 people's lives who died. So you can't be that close to midwifing the dying, of being in that process of transformation, and not ask the really big questions like, what's meaningful? What's purpose here? What is this all about? So those questions were just eking all over in my field of inquiry, while I was assisting people to live longer and better and with more ease and grace, no matter whether they lived or died. So many people started doing really, really well in the process, and it wasn't always an easy road, but being able to teach them some tools that now we use in our work that actually came out of those steps of being able to bring to people whose lives were being threatened, some information about how to move through the inner stuff that gets you blocked and stuck, so that you can really expand and manifest your purpose in a way that it takes you further. So it was great grist for the mill to then come into the awakening of knowing that from the very beginning, whatever it was that I was supposed to be doing, it was supposed to be prophetic. And, from many different people that everywhere I'd go. So whether it was a shaman or a psychic healer or a Christian charismatic healer or whatever, people would come up and say, Kirk, you're an oracle, you're a prophet, you have gifts of seeing and understanding things in a bigger picture. And I didn't know what the heck they were even talking about until now. And it's kind of now, as we launch this thing called We Are the Ones that we're doing in LA and New Jersey, that it's all really coming together, of guiding people to do their inner work so that they can manifest in their outer world what their purpose is and see that happen with abundance. So it's really been a yummy, yummy journey, and not always easy.
Okay, great. Thank you. How about you, Donnie?
Well, I've had obviously a slightly different experience. I was always very moved by certain themes, so I always enjoyed working with people. Although from the beginning of my working life, I didn't really know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I still working on the question, but what I was able to figure out is that I loved working with people, and so I took various public contact jobs. I mean, really simple things, but things that I love: working at a bank, working for an airline, being a teacher for a short time, a first grade teacher, and all those things gave me joy for a time. But then I was called to move on. So what it meant is I would get burned out at the job after usually a few years. And looking back on those experiences, what I understand about it is that simply the time had passed. It was a good job for the time, and it was important, and I learned something and gave me a peace. But what I was able to do was to listen and say, this is not serving me anymore. I'm burning out. I'm not liking the job. And I was able to leave and move on.
Yes.
So I would say that's the key, to be constantly listening to how you're feeling in your body about whatever it is you're doing. If it's not feeling good, if this is a consistent feeling, if that's a good hint that you're not in the right place.
Yes.
So it wasn't until really the mid-'90s when I got my first major really intense spiritual awakening, and I remember a friend of me, during this time when I was awakening, a friend of mine at the time said, I think we should start a foundation. And I remember when he said that I just lighted up, that this was the thing that I had been waiting for all my life but didn't know it.
Yes.
And so we started a foundation, and again, that served for a few years, and that was important. That was the beginning of my entrepreneurial experience. And so that was important for a few years, and then it wasn't the right thing after a few years, and so I left that. And then I met Kirk, and our paths came together, so that was certainly a very important part of my experience. And we knew we had something important to do together. We didn't know what it was. So another point to point out to your listeners is sometimes you just feel something important in your heart, but you may not know in that instance exactly what it was.
Yes.
And it's and this is not the easiest thing to do, but it's important to try to just live in that uncertainty. And it's, again, I know it's not always the most comfortable thing, but to breathe through that, because yes, that is that's not so easy, but the answer will come, and one does have to have a little faith. And so our answer did come, and as we came together, and we knew we had this thing together, and we didn't know at the beginning what it was. I remember teasing Kirk about it at the beginning, thinking, we're going to call it the Kirk and Donnie Show, whatever. Evolved into what we have today, the missing thread, and so which is our way of creating community service, helping people unblock themselves so they can achieve their greatness, and it's something that's deeply satisfying to both Kirk and me. And we will continue this work. However, even at this point, as Kirk mentioned with our new event coming up, we do feel at this time we're being called into something else.
Yeah.
So it's not like you get to this place and you arrive and that's the end of it forever. No. Yes, you get to the place, you get to the achievement, but there's going to be another level and another and another until the day we die. I mean, that's just a life process.
Sure. Yeah, the awakenings are ever awakening into the next awakening.